It's the Sports Peninsula podcast. Coming up, we're continuing to analyze the draft prospects for the upcoming 2025 NFL Draft being held in Green Bay this April. In this episode, we'll discuss the prospects at defensive end, the edge rushers. This is perhaps the highest profile position on the defensive side of the football, and this draft is loaded with talent with perhaps several day one possibilities. The Detroit Lions are very much in play for help at the edge, and it could come from day one. We'll talk about that and rank the prospects next. Now, here is your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Drzinski-Drew. We're talking NFL Draft. We're talking about the edge rushers, and to do that, I'm joined by Coach Andy Shield. Coach, how you doing?
Doing well, Drew. Doing well. Moving right along here. We are entering into free agency. We had to say goodbye to a great player from last year's 2024 team. And Carlton Davis is now going to play for the New England Patriots. And happy trails, Carlton. Thank you for your service.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going into one of your old stomping grounds over in New England way, out there in the Massachusetts Commonwealth. So best of luck to him. And welcome to the Sports Peninsula, Mr. DJ Reed. Brad Holmes was rather expeditious and filling that need at cornerback, which he certainly needed to do. We were talking before we went into a record mode here about some defensive back play and defensive back, more about safeties, but it's going to allow us to get more depth at safety by having DJ Reed on this team. And we will continue to see the emergence of hopefully on this Rakestraw throughout the year as a depth piece. So, but nonetheless, that has been free agency thus far. Brought back Dan Skipper. Good thing to see. Derek Barnes is back. Liking that move. That's going to be good. And we shall see. There's more to come in that regard. But, Drew, we're talking about the edge rushers. And that is something that I would expect that we address here in free agency to a certain degree, as we surprisingly did let Zadarius Smith go for now. Mm-hmm. As one of those guys. So, yes, I do think that's a free agent target, but I really do think of all the positions we've talked about thus far, maybe on the defensive side, I think we've reached the one that's most likely that we could see at number 28.
Yeah, it's a high-profile position. It's a very important position, obviously. Very deep. And the thing is, you look at this Lions team from last year, 15-2, in spite of all the injuries on the defensive side, including Aiden Hutchinson and including Marcus Davenport. They lost both their starting edge rushers. They signed Smith, and it was kind of piecemeal and rotation, go with the hot hand on the other side, and they were able to get through until the playoffs. And then it kind of caught up to them a little bit. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, Hutchinson's going to be back. You got McNeil and Reeder in the middle. Davenport has been re-signed, but you can't count him. But hold on. It's not the end of the world. It is a very low risk signing. It's his guaranteed money is, I believe, $900,000. It could go up to $4.25 million, but if it happens, then that means he's played every game this year and he's going to contribute. So I think that's a
very good football player when he does get his reps.
Yeah, so it
still happens to be about the 50% of the time.
Yeah, unfortunately, but I mean, it's a very low risk signing. It's certainly not the be all end all. Again, we're going to talk about these guys shortly that one or two might end up Lions. We don't know. There's still more time in free agency, of course. But you know what, Coach, let's get to it. There's a huge class to talk about. Once again, we start from number 20 in the bottom right. Take it away.
Yeah, this is a super deep group, Drew. I mean, we cap things off at 20, but there are guys beyond that into day 3 in the UDFA range that are going to make football teams. But let's start with Savion Jones out of LSU at number 20. He is one of a couple of LSU Tigers that we'll be talking about. We'll talk about here in a few. We go to the smaller school circuit at 19 with David Walker out of Central Arkansas. Big play, small market guy, had a big Senior Bowl. Over in at 18 is Kamon Rucker out of North Carolina. At 17, Ashton Gelade out of Louisville. Good-looking player there. That's a guy that you're going to probably see. We could be even talking into day 2 at this point in time. So, I mean, we are talking about day 2 picks right now. We're talking about them. And at 16, we talked about this guy before. A little bit. He was rated, in our defensive line group, and that's Jordan Birch out of Oregon. And at 15, Jared Ivey out of Ole Miss. At 14, Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina. That's a guy that has been on the Lions' radar. He's another one of these big, strong end over the tackle, right outside the tackle type tight ends, tight to the tackle defensive ends. And this is a guy that we could be looking at too as a future line. Josiah Stewart out of Michigan. He at number 13, he is a player I really, really like. He's a great pass rusher guy. Gets in the backfield. Numbers retired at Coastal Carolina. This is a very high impact guy at the college level. Really, really like him. Here is one of our dark horses. Drew, you'll be talking about Braden Swinson here at number 12. And at number 11 is JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State. And Tuimoloau out of Ohio State, this is one of a couple of Ohio State Buckeye defensive ends that really bookend that great defense that we saw win the national championship this past year. Into the top 10, Princely Uman Mailayan is from Ole Miss. I worked on these names last night, Drew, so I was, we got a little couple of tongue twisters here. But Uman Mialan, Princely Uman Mialan out of Ole Miss, another one of two Ole Miss defensive ends. We see a lot of bookend tandem groups right here. Another one of our dark horses, just outside of our countdown group, is Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State. We'll be talking about him as the dark horse candidate and a guy that I know is very, very near and dear to Chris Spielman. So this is a guy I would say that would be on that Lions radar perhaps on day 2. Into our top 8, which will feature all of these guys. Donovan Eziraku out of Boston College. Guy that was a high impact player for Bill O'Brien there. We're going to talk about him in depth. And at 7 is Landon Jackson out of Arkansas. We've got a series of these strong end type edges, guys that are kind of point edges, ones that you would call a strength to that we want you have the ball run towards. There's a lot of that type of defensive end in this group here, Drew. And, I know I'm talking about the framework, a lot of the defense that I've called, but these are the type of players they are, not necessarily just a fly up the field and pin their ears back types, guys that stop the run very well too. Landon Jackson is yet another one of those. A guy that I know is you like a lot is another one of these type of defensive end type edge players, Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M via Purdue. Heck of a player there. Looking forward to previewing him. Mike Green out of Marshall is a player that has been talked about quite a bit and is a guy that had some really big stats out of the small market Sunbelt Marshall Thundering Herd. Guy that's on the Lions radar for sure. Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M at 4. He was a guy that we also talked about on the interior side of the defensive line. So another one of these Texas A&M players that we have been featuring, these bookend defensive ends. Michael Williams out of Georgia in at 3. Another high caliber player and national champion out of Georgia. And at 2, James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. This is a pin his ears back pass rushing extraordinaire, perhaps as good of a pass rusher as we have in the league. And in at number 1, dynamic players. Got to get healthy, Drew. He's got to get healthy. But this is a guy that can play the edge and be an elite pass rusher and edge setter, as well as box linebacker. We're talking about Abdul Carter out of Penn State.
Well, Coach, just jump into it. Let's introduce Abdul Carter.
Abdul Carter is a 6'3", 252-pound junior out of Pennsylvania State University in State College, Pennsylvania. He is a 4-star prospect out of Philly. So he's a native of the state of Pennsylvania, and he runs a sub-4 540, and that is pretty ridiculous speed. He is in the 99th percentile in regards to his ability to get off the ball and cover 40 yards. He was the 2024 Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year and the 2024 Big Ten Defensive Lineman of the Year. He's a 3-time All-Big Ten selection, 2-time All-American. He's another one of these 2022 freshman All-Americans. We talked about a ton of these guys in our previews. He was yet another one of them. 39.5 career tackles for loss in 3 years, 23 career sacks in 3 years. He has over 1,000 reps as a box linebacker. He has less than 1,000 reps as an edge. He has 750 as an edge, and he has 39.5 career tackles for loss and 23 sacks. This is a dynamic playmaker, Drew. This is a guy that in most drafts is number 1 overall. And there is an argument. There is an argument that you can make him number 1 overall this year. This guy is a talented football player, and he wears a very similar number to a guy that I believe played at Penn State as well, that plays for the Dallas Cowboys. And that is who this individual is compared to.
Micah Parsons. You got it. Coach, there's so much to like about Abdul Carter. I'll get into it. Amazing athletic ability. I mean, the guy is just take a look, over 1,000 reps as a box linebacker, 750 plus as an edge rusher, and he's an edge rush extraordinaire. I mean, this guy can do it all. Blazing speed and quickness, illustrated by a 4.48 40 at the combine. That's just scary stuff. But when you watch him play, his play speed is something else. His best get-off explosiveness in the group by far. He's a tough physical tackler. He plays through physical and mental adversity, and you got to like that. He's got a short memory, so to speak. He doesn't dwell on negative, and he doesn't get overly hyped on a great play. He's ready for the next snap, next rep up. That's what he is. You got to like that attitude and mentality. Outstanding in space. He can easily jump back into a box linebacker alignment and play. He can do it all. He's really a Swiss Army knife in the front seven. He's a serious pass disruptor, whether it's in coverage, dropping back, or whether it's as a pass rusher. He's going to cause problems out there. You got to always have an eye on number 11. He's an elite block shedder. That's very important. Really like it for his speed and his size. It's scary. 252 pounds and run a 4.48. That's amazing. Elite recovery and tackling speed. Again, amazing athlete. And really, he just maintains a tight arc in the pass rush. It's really something to watch when he goes through drills, and when you watch him on film, how he can get down. And coach, he's just really impressive to look at. We say he's got weaknesses. Everybody does, but man, there's not too many, is there?
No, there really isn't. I mean, he's the elite defensive prospect of this draft. There are a couple of things that are going to happen for a guy like this that he needs to obviously address, but he would have anyway. There was something that took place last year where he had an assault charge over a dispute he had with a tow truck driver. It was resolved, and everyone moved forward. It appears to be an isolated one-time thing. There are some other players that we will be talking about that also have some issues that might be something that we'd want to take a look at. But this seems to be an isolated thing. However, he did get himself into hot water once. So, that is something to always take a look at, but he's got to get strong. He's got to get stronger. He's going to, and that's, we're going to say that quite a few times here when we're talking about the real bendy, twitchy, quickie type edges, the bursty kind of upfield type guys, like an Abdul Carter. They're going to have to get stronger. He's going to get, kind of when he's working through his progression, he can start to work higher and higher and higher. And that 6'3", 252, that's not going to match well with most offensive tackles. They're going to win that battle. You got to work underneath and keep your arc tight. And that's something that he's going to have to continue to work at. He does whip a little bit more. He's not quite Micah Parsons in regards to the generating of tackles. He misses a little bit in the open field, a little bit more. But that's something that can be harnessed and controlled, and he can continue to be a professional football player. That will get better. He's got to continue to work at, developing his techniques and keep adding to that pass rush plan and making that elite, because he's going to make his living on the edge. That's where he's going to make his living. His hand-striking and fighting is a work in progress. Again, he's done a lot of box linebacker. We're talking about a pretty raw defensive end prospect here. So, some of those kinds of things in that block destruction and block shedding from that, is still going to be evolved. But these are things that you get better at as a pro. But he's got to hit the ground running. He's had some health issues. He should not worry about any kind of surgeries. If it's something that he can be ready for camp, he should go and do it. If it, or if even if it delayed camp by a week or so and slowed his progression for a week, he should go do that so he can hit the ground running. When he is, when the time comes, he can really get in there and show what he can do, so he can be as max of a rookie year as he can possibly have. Because the time is now. We don't want to go slow start, might stunt an Abdul Carter. He wants to hit the ground running and get things ready to go. But I tell you what, if I had the draft capital to be able to acquire Abdul Carter, if I were us, the Detroit Lions, I'm not going to spend any time on it because we are not going to get him. But I certainly would. I think there's some other prospects we could be more in line for that we need to be more concerned about in regards to any kind of character issues. This is an elite football player that's getting drafted real early. It's going to be light out still in Wisconsin when he gets drafted.
Yeah, you're right. If not for needs at quarterback by some of the top teams and having a couple up there that are certainly worthy of a top 5 pick potentially, that's usually what happens. Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter to me are the 2 best prospects overall in this draft. So yeah, there's a lot to like about Abdul Carter. I can't imagine he goes out of the top 3, quite frankly, but stranger things have happened. We'll see. Our number 2 prospect coach is out of the University of Tennessee, James Pierce Jr., 6'5", 245-pound junior. Lot to like here. He's from Charlotte, North Carolina, ran a 4.47 40. Not too bad. 10.3 broad jump at the combine. He's a 2-time All-SEC player. He has 29.5 career tackles for loss, 19.5 career sacks. He's had over 80 career quarterback pressures and over 900 reps as an edge defender. Coach James Pierce Jr. is an electric athlete. What do you like about him?
Oh, this is your glider. This is your pass rush extraordinaire. Long, lean frame that can bend and arc. This is an excellent edge responder versus the run too. He can play the run. He's gonna get to get pro strong. He's 245. That frame is gonna take on 10, 15 pounds guaranteed. And you look at that body type, and he puts that on the right spots, and he will. He is going to be an absolute specimen out there, and he can play the run. This is a guy that's not afraid to set a responsible edge that way. He is a good hand striker. He engages blocks well. He's got a lot more reps, 900 plus edge reps. He's been that focused player. He's a guy that plays off of that edge, and that's where he is comfortable. And that is where he has played. He looks the part. He strikes blocks and shuns blocks very well. He's a very smart player. He understands timing of this position. He understands fit and space. And some of that is kind of an awareness type thing, and he certainly has it. He is another guy that can just absolutely explode off the football. He's a get off rocket ship. I mean, he can absolutely launch himself up, into his pass rush repertoire or down into a fit position, and just be an absolute just burner that way. Very much like Abdul Carter in that respect. Like I said, he's got great responsibility. He sets a very responsible edge. He's a good point defender. He can play that strong end, so to speak, the guy that you want to have the ball funneled to, that's going to go to the strength, whatever that would be determined. Yeah, this is the guy you would be able to, kind of archetype your defensive scheme towards that way. He's good that way. Even though he's built to be kind of that off, just kind of pin your ears back, 9 pass rush type guy. Natural, well-balanced pass rush repertoire. He's very comfortable in doing it, maybe even a little more evolved in some ways than Carter. And he also maintains a very tight arc on his pass rush, which is something that these coaches try to get you technically to get towards. So James Pierce Jr. brings a lot to the table, Drew. He is not far. He's different than Abdul Carter. But he's not far off. We're talking about another high first-round draft pick. What's he got to do, though, Drew, to get a little bit better?
Well, you mentioned it earlier, Coach. Like Carter and most of these guys are going to need to get pro strong, and that's no different for James Pierce. But like you said, you look at his frame, he could easily put on 10 pounds in his arms and legs, and you wouldn't even, I mean, you wouldn't really notice it, but it's going to be there, and that's extra mass. I think he can do it. Reminds me in that regard of Cliff Averill, in that, because I remember being concerned about his size back then, because that was back when Cliff Averill got drafted. That was when it wasn't the norm to have an edge rusher that light, typically.
They're bigger guys, yeah.
Yeah, so, but Pierce seems to fit that mold, and Cliff Averill had a very nice career. He needs to shed blocks quicker. Again, like you said, he's good, but he's got to get a little better, a little quicker, because this is the NFL, right? And that's what's going to happen. He's and must advance his pass rush skills. So again, everyone's going to figure him out after one season, or even after just seeing tape from half a year. They're going to start figuring you out. You got to keep getting better, keep learning new tricks, and keep getting better with your hand technique and everything, and in your block shedding, and keep evolving and being better, being always ahead of the curve. James Pierce is certainly capable of doing that. He needs to be an elite technician, basically what I'm saying here. And he can't just be a fly and fine pass rusher. And Coach, you articulated very well. He's really not. So he just got to understand that, in the NFL, defending the run is just as important. It's not as glamorous, but James Pierce certainly can do it. He's got to make sure he can do that, make that transition to the NFL, and could take a little more time getting physically ready for the NFL in terms of starting reps. But I believe James Pierce is a top 10 pick. And Coach, he was one of he caught my eye immediately during the mock draft processes, like in late December, early January, and he's climbed the board so steadily and then rapidly. Real impressive, but I think everyone knows about James Pierce Jr. I can't imagine he gets out of the top 10 in this draft, Coach.
No. What he has to just continue to be what he was at Tennessee. He can't just take his skills and play the league. Yeah, he might get out of the gates real nice, but he's going to really kind of taper then. He needs to continue on that trend, and that might take a minute, because he's just got to get bigger and stronger to be able to do what he does well, and did well in Knoxville. But yeah, this is another gem of a pick. And at number 3, Drew, we're going staying in the SEC. Going to stay in the SEC, Drew, and we're going to talk about Michael Williams out of Georgia, 6'5", 260-pound junior. He was a 5-star. Like Kirby Smart got all over the place, but he didn't have to go too far. This kid's from Columbus, Georgia. He was a 2-time All-SEC selection. 2022 freshman All-American. Talked about that a couple of prospects ago. This is another one of those players, and he was also 2022 freshman All-SEC. He's got 21 and a half career tackles for loss, 69 career quarterback pressures. This is a different type of an edge. We talked about a guy that was a box edge. We talked about a guy that was a pure edge. This is a guy that's a combo defensive lineman. This is a guy that has over 500 career reps at defensive tackle and over 600 career reps on the edge. So we're talking about over 1,100. He's played a lot of football. He's played a lot of football all across the defensive line. So this is a defensive lineman by trade, and he can play across the board. Michael Williams is our number 3 edge prospect, Drew.
Yeah, a lot to like about him too, Coach. Big physical anchor end. So he's already at that 260-pound mark, like we've been talking. We talked about a couple of guys about 245. Michael Williams is 260. It makes a difference. So he's there already. Good movement skills and functional athleticism. It's on tape. His versatility speaks to that. A physical, responsible block destroyer and shedder. And you got to like that. That means he's disciplined. He's not going to try and be a hero. He makes good plays. He makes very strong plays, and he's disciplined. Very important. Sets a responsible edge. Critical against the run, and especially against running quarterbacks and RPO offenses. Very important. Superior run defender. Can't say enough about that. And just a relentless competitor, has a high motor, and it's hard running. He gets after it and he's got a get after it mentality. I mean, he goes sideline to sideline. You got to love him. Scheme and alignment versatile. Coach, there is so much to like about Michael Williams. I mean, I would love to have him in Detroit. He ain't getting out of the top 15 in my view, but again, stranger things have happened. Let's talk about what he needs to work on.
Yeah, I agree. We'll get to that too. We'll get to why I totally agree with you where he's going to be selected. He doesn't quite get off the football like Abdul Carter or James Pierce Jr. He's not quite, that guy that can just absolutely get in a stance and just be like a rocket ship. He's twitchy, but not quite that twitchy. So he is a little bit more of that kind of point defensive end, defensive tackle type player. He's a little bit better of a run responder than he an edge setter than he is a pass rusher at this point in time. That's something that Carter and Pierce have on him, but yet he's a different type of skill. Okay, just kind of like I guess Wayne Gretzky and Keith Primo. Keith Primo were both centers, right?
Yeah.
But different type of centers. I guess and I don't know if that would be that drastic of a player type. But he's a little bit more of a meat and potatoes defensive end. He's not gonna do some of those real freakish quick things off of the edge like those guys might be able to do. He's got to develop as a pass rusher. That's pure, plain and simple. He's gotta develop that way, and he has to make his name, and his forte has to be being that great block destructor and block shedder, and because he may be the best one in the draft in regards to this position group, and not in regarding defensive tackles. I'm talking about edge guys that can go down inside. He can play a little high at times too, as he can extends in reps and keeps playing. He's down in there fighting in those trenches. It gets tiring, so he's gonna have to rotate some. But I guess in the floor aspect, is he just going to be a guy that is destined by the end of the rookie deal to be more of a Kaminsky, Uridzweke type? That's going to be more of just a defensive tackle playing tight to the offense, to that offensive tackle, or inside of the offensive tackle, or can he actually become a long-term edge? I guess that is the question that Michael Williams has to ask. I really like what you had to say in regards to the type of prospect he is. He's a great, in many ways, he does do some of those things very, very well and is close to being an elite block shedder and block destroyer. That's where he's got to make his name. I would love to see the Lions get an opportunity to look at him. I don't know if that's the type of edge exactly we're looking for. If we're looking for a little bit more of a pure form edge, because this is a guy that can play in and out across the defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, that I agree with you. It might, because if you're looking for a pass rush specialist, this is probably not the prospect you're looking at. But if you're looking for just an all-around talent that's going to be just rock solid at that minimum, like you said, a high floor, Michael Williams is there. Very, very safe pick in my view. And I don't think he'll be there. I think it's like I said, I think he's a top 15 pick, maybe down to 20 at the lowest. But I definitely a very good prospect. Let's talk about our number 4 guy, Coach Shamar Stewart, the edge defender, Texas A&M University product, 6'6", 291-pound junior. Like you said, we mentioned him when we talked about our defensive line, the interior defensive line. Shamar Stewart, number 4 edge prospect here. 5-star prospect out of Miami. He ran a 4.59 40, 291 pounds, 6'6", 4.59 40. Let me just let that percolate a little bit, folks. 6 foot, nearly a 7 foot wingspan. A 10 foot 11 inch broad jump, a 40-inch vertical at the combine. He's a 2024 All SEC player, 2022 freshman All-American. Once again, here we go, another freshman All-American from 22, that class of 22. 73 career quarterback pressures, over 350 reps as a defensive tackle, and 900 plus reps on the edge. A versatile, disruptive, very big guy. Shamar Stewart, Coach, what do you like about him?
He is an absolute freakish athlete. I mean, he is something ridiculous in regards to his testables. He goes to a place like a combine or a showcase like that, and he is the top player in the world just based off of that, right in of itself. So he is just an amazing athlete with all sorts of bend and quickness and a gigantic frame, 6'6", 291. He's a physical, mean edge setter. He is a tough point defensive end. You want to run at him, go ahead. Go right ahead, because he's going to take it on all day long. He has an outstanding run anchor that way. So he's another great run defending edge player. He's got great tracking and pursuing capability. He's got great speed and great long stride and range. He can do these things. So if you're going to run away from him, this is a guy that can factor in and closing things down, which can help kind of gather and control and harness running quarterbacks. So there's things to like about there. He's another guy that understands how to destroy a block. He's played some defensive tackle. So, he can really kind of get in there and do some of those things and recognize blocking schemes and press hips and fight pressure and work across face and do the things that good defensive linemen do at this level. We talked about, just how crazy athletic he is. And, on top of it, he's another guy that can go down inside. He can go down inside, put his hand in the dirt, move inside the offensive tackle, and help out right inside of the run that way, and also infect the pass rush that way too. He's got tremendous movement skills for someone his size. Just a true athletic specimen. He's got great speed to power closer and his pass rush. That is his kind of trademark, is the speed to power move. And he can really, stunt and slant. This is a lot to like about him, Drew. A lot to like about him. What are some things that are going to keep him moving down the board a little bit, though?
Well, the first thing is working on hand striking and punch with more consistency. So it's in his toolbox, so to speak, but we don't see it as much on tape as he's probably going to need to in the NFL. So it's something he's going to have to work on. He does get hung up on blocks as a result of inconsistent engagement. It kind of ties into that. So again, he's going to have to get not get a bigger bag of tricks, but develop those tricks more. He's going to have to work on that. He's not been too much of a play producer in college. Very good football player, great football player, but isn't a stat guy per se, like the sacks, etc. So, doesn't have the gaudy stats in that regard. But his pads can get high as he fatigues. He's, again, a taller guy, a bigger guy. You're going to see that. So that's something he's going to have to certainly be cognizant of and get coached up on. He's a singles and doubles pass rusher. And coach, define that. What do we mean by that?
He does. He creates pressures. He can deflect passes. Those are doubles. He can do some of those kinds of things. He can make a quarterback flush and throw an incompletion. That's a single. But he's not going to force a sack or get and hit home and get a ton of sacks himself. He is going to disrupt passes and force passes, but he is not going to make a lot of plays on the quarterback.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And then that's what you see on tape too. Needs more in his pass rush repertoire. Again, if he's going to be basically what we're saying is if an NFL GM is going to say, I'm going to take Shemar Stewart in the top 20, I'm confident he has the ability to do that. And he's shown enough that he's capable of doing that. That's to me, that's what makes him a top 20 pick versus perhaps in the bottom 20, which isn't a bad thing for the Lions in this case. But again, the question is he another guy that's just destined to be an interior defensive tackle? Again, a high floor, but not so high of a ceiling if you're looking for a real impactful stat guy on your D-line in day one. So again, that's where the questions are. But I'll tell you what, Coach, if I'm Brad Holmes and Shemar Stewart, he might be there, like reminds me of Terry and Arnold last year. Didn't think he wouldn't have been that, where they were picking last year. But when he appeared there at number 20, I believe is where they got him, right? If I'm not mistaken, and they had to trade to get him. Shemar Stewart's somebody I would think they're going to be looking at. Your thoughts?
Yeah, he's definitely on their radar. And that last question in the weaknesses, of between Michael Williams and him, I think Stewart is the more likely guy that could become an interior defensive lineman by the end of his rookie deal. If you were to get bigger, it's just that you don't see 6'6", 310-pound edge rushers. Mm-hmm. He is just kind of, it's just kind of like, the 6'3", 225-pound shortstops that get drafted at 18 years old. They're destined probably for third base.
Yeah.
So, we're looking at guys that are going to probably change position here. That's probably going to happen with Shemar Stewart. So long term, if you're going to spend draft capital, day one draft capital, you're really drafting a long-term defensive tackle here because he just doesn't make a lot of plays. He just has not made a lot of plays at the college level, which, eludes, and that's okay as long as he is an absolute disruptor extraordinaire, which suits you better as a defensive tackle. He was ranked among our defensive tackles, but he's coming in as an edge. I see a long-term defensive tackle, Drew. That's what I see.
Yeah, and I would agree with you too. But I definitely see solid day one value here, and another safe pick in my view. So good luck to him. Talk about our number 5 prospect, Coach.
Yeah, we're talking about a guy that has been connected. His name has been connected to the Detroit Lions. very, very recently, and he has some real intriguing qualities here. We're talking about Mike Green, 6'3", 251-pound junior out of Marshall. Very similar size and structure to Abdul Carter. He comes from Williamsburg, Virginia, where he was, a linebacker and a tight end and a wide receiver there. That's what he was. That's what he played in high school. He was also an all-state wrestler. So this is a kid that has, kind of your tailor-made kind of for a big-time football player, with those kinds of, skills. He originally went to the University of Virginia, and he transferred from Virginia. And we'll get into that in a little bit. 2024 All-American. He was the 2024 Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year. So this is the guy that was the toast of the league. We're talking about 2024 stats, not career stats. We're talking about just stats this year. 22 and a half tackles for loss and 17 sacks. Those were his 2024 numbers. He's got over 1,000 plus reps on the edge, Drew. Mike Green is an intriguing name to be talking about here, especially when it affiliates to our Detroit Lions, because he's the type of pass rusher they're looking for.
He certainly is, Coach, and there's a lot of reasons to like Mike Green. He has elite twitch and he's a fluid mover, so he's very smooth out there. You watch the tape, Mike Green gets it done. He explodes off the ball and gains ground. He's excellent at playing with elite arc and with responsible contain principles. So important, so important. I can't stress that enough. We saw, 90 different positions. We saw a linebacker, and remember Jared Davis out of Florida, the Lions drafted. Outstanding player, but just didn't have gap discipline. That's why it's just so important. Mike Green's got it. He's a violent, hard hand striker. So at the point of attack, the point of contact, he is a violent, hard hand striker. Gotta like that. That wrestling background, it shows up in his advanced block destruction and shedding. He's got that strong anchor. He's got leverage. It becomes instinctive when you have that wrestling background. It's so critical. He's a hard, unwavering competitor, just a high motor, never quits operating, relentless effort player, very planned pass rush repertoire. So he's got some key moves. He's got some go-to pass rush techniques, and they've been very effective for him. And he's very, very strategic in what he does and how he uses it. And he's extremely impressive overall as a pass rusher at Marshall. The stats speak to that, especially last year, Coach. Talk about what we need to maybe be aware of with Mike Green.
Well, first let's talk about some of the things that he needs to work on as a player. And he can be a bit of a diver. He can kind of be a riverboat gambler out there. He's flying around and kind of playing like Jefferson in Fast Times on Ridgemont High. He's all over the place, and that's an exaggeration, but you can't leave your feet and be very effective in playing defense and at the elite levels. And he can leave his feet sometimes, and that's kind of taking too much of a risk, and he's going to whiff as a result. He's going to miss on some plays, especially in the run, that he's going to need to settle down and take on blocks and be a little bit more square when he's a point defender. So he needs to, harness that play control. He's got to kind of get that under control and be a guy that's going to be committed to technique as well. He doesn't do much covering, but that's not what he's out there for. He played backer in high school, but he in his evolution has become an edge player, and he's your true edge. Even though he possesses a size and frame that you would like to see some box linebacker skills from, but that's not what he is. He is an edge. He's going to have to get strong as a result, because he's not quite there yet. Concerns, Drew. Concerns, and we have a couple. And really it's one repetitive thing here. He's got 19 games. He's only played 19 games in his career, and there's a reason for that. Out of high school, he was charged with sexual assault. That took some time to clarify itself, and he still went to the University of Virginia, where he was again charged with sexual assault and was dismissed from that football team. That is why he is at Marshall. Now, I don't mean to say that as an indictment. The young man has cleared these, is once again cleared, and he has been able to move on with his life. But these are a couple of things that were in his way as a young man. Now, We don't know any more than what I just was able to report. So it was kind of something that, you have to be aware of this, because on paper that is very, very, very ugly. And that may just be enough to say, you know what, we already have a little bit of riverboat gambling that takes place on this football team. We do not need to continue to add these type of characters, to our organization. Players with pasts. Mm-hmm. So I'm not advocating for that to take place with Mike Green. I think Mike Green deserves to be able to be drafted into the NFL. The legal system has cleared him to do so, and I think the path is now. However, those are some things for me that I am wondering about the other prospects around him a little bit when it comes to drafting Mike Green. He's got to get stronger, and he's got to get stronger, and he's got to add a little bit of mass if he's going to be that kind of defensive end, or because we need to know if he's going to be able to set a consistent edge in the NFL, or if he's just going to be able to pin his ears back, pass rush specialist. But Mike Green is a guy, Drew. He's certainly a guy.
He is, and this is where I, as a Lions fan, I'm going to defer to Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell and Chris Spielman and the gang. Let the process take place. Let the interview process. The tape speaks for itself. He's a very good football player, but to get through the character stuff, that's where you got to have the interview process, and you got to kind of go with your gut on that. So hopefully he's gotten things right, and he's on his way to a very good career. You never know. He could be a Detroit.
Well, why is it a concern? Well, it wasn't a concern for Justin Tucker until people finally spoke up and he got caught. Mm-hmm. Or it wasn't a concern for Deshaun Watson until people spoke up and he kind of got caught. Now, are they still playing in the NFL? They still are. However, these are some things, who knows exactly how it worked out. And I'm not accusing Mike Green of being one of those type of players, but if it was a couple of fights and a couple of mix-ups, a couple of traffic incidents and things of that nature, these are things that we certainly can rise above from fairly quickly and routinely. But when it comes to something like this, it certainly does turn your eyes towards it.
It does. So, we're certainly going to find out a lot on draft day, depending on where Mike Green goes. It will speak to how he did the interview, quite frankly. I think that's going to be the key for him. So,
and some of the background, how it checks out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And in all fairness to Mike Green, he deserves that too.
Absolutely. No question about that. So, hopefully everything's good for him. Wishing him well. Let's go on to number 6. Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M, 6'4", 285-pound junior coach. He's from Byron, Texas, so he stayed local. And he's an Army All-American Bowl participant. He transferred from Purdue, so he originally went to Purdue up in Indiana, but then he ended up coming back down home to Texas A&M. He led the Big Ten in sacks in 2023 with Purdue. He had 17 tackles for loss and 12 sacks at Purdue. He was all Big Ten there. He was an all-SEC player at Texas A&M. He has 31 career tackles for loss, 17 career sacks, and over 1,400 reps on the edge. Coach, this is a true edge defender, Nick Scorton, and he's got some good size. What do you like about him?
Drew, I know you have looked at him, and my, I hadn't quite gotten to, I was familiar with him from his time in the Big Ten, so I knew he was a good player. I was happy to hear when he left, even though Michigan and Michigan State really didn't play, Purdue really didn't factor this much this year. But this is a guy that I know you liked a lot, so I started to take a peek. This guy is an Energizer Bunny at 6'4", 285. He gets after it, and he plays hard. He is a relentless pursuit and effort player, which the Lions love those types of players, and he's got a great frame. You look at him right there. So, it's 6'4", 285, and it's a wide, thick, firm frame. He's got tremendous size for the edge. Heavy-duty power bull rush move player. A guy that can really thump with those hands and speed to power himself into a quarterback. And he was a big-time special teams player at both Purdue and Texas A&M. We're talking about a high-caliber edge player. Led the Big Ten in sacks type of pass rusher out there on special teams. And every down defensive end in the SEC staying out and running out and playing on special teams. So that's going to add another big piece to his arsenal that way. He's a very nuanced and very planned pass rusher. Bigger guys oftentimes have to be, because they're not just going to be able to beat you with their feet. They've got to show things with their hands to be able to create separation that way.
Yeah.
He sets an excellent edge, very responsible run defender. Really, really like you, Drew. I like Nick Scourton a lot. However, he could be in that 28 range, and there's a reason for it.
Yeah, there's a few things. Let's talk about him. So he can play with high pad level far too often. So this isn't necessarily a fatigue thing. This is a discipline thing. It's going to have to be corrected, and I'm confident good coaching will do that. Not that he didn't get good coaching before, but maybe more pointed coaching on this part of it, because in the NFL that's not going to work against those big tackles that are 6'6", 310, 320 pounds. It's going to be tough when you're playing with too high of a pad level, trying to get penetration at a quarterback. Gets washed out and taken on rides against double teams at times. So you would expect that, but you got to have awareness. So I think it speaks to more being aware when you recognize that and being able to counter that effectively. He's going to have to work on that. And like we talked about, Mike Green, he can be a bit of a diver too, trying to do a little too much at times. So he's got to be careful of that, especially in NFL. That's not going to fly. He's going to have to be, like you said, one of his strengths is being a responsible run defender and set an excellent edge. He needs to hang his hat on that. Can't be diving for tackles. That's not going to work. He can get hung up on blocks from time to time. So again, something he needs to correct. Engages too much in the pass rush a little bit. You don't get, and that's what happens if you try to do a little too much and get a little too tricky at the line. Those big old tackles or big old guards just going to engulf you, and then that's it. It's a stalemate, and you really can't even make an effective play. So he's got to work on that. He's shown to be a little tight and stiff in his movement at times, which was something I saw on tape too, Coach. I was concerned about that. Needs to continue to add to his pass rush arsenal to really fulfill his true potential. And again, the big question here, and I think it's an even bigger question with Scourton, is he just another big edge that's destined to go inside and go become a defensive tackle? That's where my concern lies. But I really, really like him, and I believe he's going to be in play at 28, Coach. I'm not sure, because there's going to be a lot of, the Lions aren't locked in that they have to address a position. I mean, there's key positions they have to address, and certainly edge is one of them. But I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure. There's things to like on tape a lot, Coach. Your thoughts?
If there's a player at a position of higher capability of a different position type, and it's a position group he's just a better prospect at a position that is also of interest for us, take him over Nick Scourton. That being said, yes, I think he's truly in play. And I think you look at him and Shamar Stewart, and you look at two very similar guys in many ways. This guy's made a few more plays than Stewart has in his career. We're talking about Stewart's another guy that's gotten washed out in blocks and been too much of a part of a blocking scheme, and not enough of a point defender. He was part of a point of attack. And that we don't want to see. That's something you don't want to have. And when you get run at all the time, that's going to happen from time to time. You're not going to be perfect. But, those are the things that I which one of them can hang out on the edge the longest. Yeah. And that would be of the two A&M prospects where I'd go.
Makes sense. Let's talk about our next prospect at number 7, Coach.
Yeah, this is another transfer prospect, another guy that's transferred away from his original landing spot. We're talking about Landon Jackson from Arkansas, 6'6", 264, another big point defensive end type out of Texarkana, Texas. He transferred. That's where he's coming from. So he's coming from the border of the border city of Texarkana.
Went to LSU. There's a lot of cold cores over there.
Yeah, there you go, sir. There you go. Went to LSU originally, spent a year there, then came over to the University of Arkansas. 10'11" wingspan. So I mean, or a 10'11" wingspan. 10'11". Sorry, that would be, it'd be 6'11". That's a misprint there. If he was 10'11" wingspan, we're about a freakish human being. I think that's for a different podcast episode. That's for the type of stuff that was on the Art Bell show back in the day. Some sort of like Twilight Zone type thing, or Lost in Space type stuff. 6'11", folks. That's a misprint. We do the graphics ourselves. That's on me. So he's got 6'11" wingspan. We talked about a guy that was 6'11" and 3/4. Another big, long wingspan guy. He's a 10'9" broad jump. That is true, and that is on the money there. He's a 40.5 inch vertical leap. So we're talking about another guy that's a great athlete. He was all SEC with the Razorbacks. He had 26.5 career tackles for loss, 16 career sacks. He has 15 career quarterback hits. He's got 410 reps as a defensive tackle and over 1,000 as a rep. So this is another guy, 1,000 reps as an edge. So this is another guy that can play along that defensive line, and another guy that's of intrigue for the Detroit Lions, Drew.
Yeah, coach, and I was really impressed with him at the combine. Obviously the game's played on the gridiron and on the field, but he really impressed at the combine. Excellent, responsible edge setter. Landon Jackson's a very physical football player. He can bring a lot of physicality and movement and stunt schemes, which is really, really effective on tape when you watch it. He's alignment versatile. He's very strong. He's a speed to power pass rusher. You got to like that. So when we talk about that, he gets off the ball quick, and he's got a lot of power at that initial point of contact, that hand striking. It's good stuff. Tremendous effort player. He's a leader and a captain type character. Very high caliber character guy. Very bright student of the game, high football IQ, and has all the makings of an outstanding NFL run anchor. Lot to like about Landon Jackson, coach. What does he need to work on?
Well, he's not an arc. He's not a speed rusher. He's not a guy off the edge. He's not Abdul Carter. He's not James Pierce. He's not Mike Green. He's a speed to power guy. He incorporates a few different combos there, but he does not maintain the tightest arc, which means he gets upfield a little bit and is not going to hit a lot, and that's not going to yield too many home runs or triples. You're going to get doubles and singles that way. He could struggle hitting home a little bit in the NFL, which means he's not going to be maybe the most productive of players out there on the edge. Don't have to be, but those are some things you do like to see out of a high-level edge player. Doesn't move very well for a guy that is bendy and athletic. He is not the greatest lateral mover. So another concern here, is that he could be destined for the inside, Drew. He's got to become a master technician. He's got to be able to use his hands very well. He's got to be masterful with his feet placement and his timing, because and he's got to work on pad level and some of these things, because he's not as explosive of an athlete as some of these other guys that we've talked about. But Landon Jackson does possess the skills to be a very helpful football player along a defensive line.
Yeah, no question about that. Definitely like him. Probably early day 2, maybe late day 1, but probably early day 2 is what I'm thinking.
Day 2. He's a day 2 guy.
Yeah. So
but early. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. Our number 8 guy is Donovan Ezeraku out of BC Boston College, the 6'2", 248-pound senior. He hails from Williamstown, New Jersey, so he stayed on the East Coast there. Accomplished track and field background for him as well. And then he's also the 2024 Ten Hendricks Award winner. He was a 2024 All-American, 2-time All-ACC player, 196 career tackles, 40.5 career tackles for loss, 28 career sacks, and over 100 career quarterback pressures. Coach, Donovan Ezeraku knows how to get to the quarterback. Talk about what you like about him.
Yeah, he's a pretty, he can produce in the run. He makes tackles. He makes a lot of plays in the run game. So we're not just talking about a little guy that can just pin his ears back and be a designated pass rusher. He can play defensive end. He's a great he gets off the ball really, really well. He's explosive that way. So we're talking about that type of speed rusher. He maintains that kind of arc. So type of pass rusher he is. He's getting a masterful at planning his technical pass rush and getting underneath blocks and maintaining his arc. Very, very good at that. High caliber functional athlete for the NFL. He's definitely got the athletic composite to be a great NFL football player. He's a phenomenal effort and energy guy. Another guy that goes a long way with guys like Calvin Shepard, Aaron Glenn, and Dan Campbell for that way. Donovan Ezeraku it plays like the type of player they like. He's very intuitive and reactive guy. And he's a very productive defender at the college level. He made big numbers. But he's not the biggest guy, is he, Drew?
No, and that's the issue. The frame's a concern. Being 6'2", the weight, not as big of a deal. If you're 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", you can add some mass there. 6'2", 248. He might be maxed out there. He maybe can add another 10 pounds. But yeah, the lack of height's an issue as an edge, certainly. Hand striking and punch must improve. If he's going to be an effective, pass rusher in the NFL, it's got to happen. And again, very much undersized. So he's going to have to get technically. We know he's a smart player. We know he has he has a technical background, and he's a very technical player. He's got to really be able to hang his hat on that in the NFL. Good outside offensive tackles will overpower him. He needs to elevate physicality to the NFL level. He's to elevate his physicality, and he just doesn't have a 3-down anchor at this point. So the question really is, Coach, can he realistically ever be a 3-down edge at his size? Not sure. I've seen him mocked to the Lions at 28 by some folks. I don't agree. I like him, but I would like him a lot better at 60, and I'm not sure he's going to be there at 60 in the second round because he is that talented. But a lot to like about Donovan Ezeiruaku out of Boston College. We've got about 5 minutes here, Coach, but if you want to touch on Ezeiruaku, what are your thoughts on him before we go to our
real quickly, at 28, if they can turn him into Abdul Carter and make him a box linebacker at times too, yes, take him at 28. If not, let's see if we can get him at 60 and be a dynamic guy that we can make rotational to a starter eventually if we can get around 8-9 really good pounds on him.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, definitely. Our dark horses, I got Braden Swinson out of LSU, edge defender, 6'4", 250-pound senior from Douglasville, Georgia. He transferred from Oregon. He played 30 games at Oregon for the Ducks. He was an all-SEC player at LSU. He has 25 career tackles for loss, 22 career passive breakups and pass deflections, 90-plus career quarterback pressures, and over 1,200 reps on the edge between his time at Oregon and LSU. He gets great gains getting off the ball as a strength, and he's very good. He's a very good functional athlete. He's a very good hand striker and hand fighter. So he's very technical on the line. What he needs to work on, he does have some frame and length concerns. 250, 6'4", not a bad height, but probably could use a few more pounds. And obviously not the longest player, so he's going to have to work on his technique. Not a great block destroyer or shredder against good combo partners. So he's going to have to be cognizant of when he's getting double teamed. When a tight end's gonna cheat to try and help out the tackle, he's gonna have to be aware of that, and he's got to play. And he really has to play over aggressive to compensate for physicality struggles against the top tier offensive linemen. So again, he's gonna have to become a very good technical player. I like Swinson. I think he's a late day 2 guy, even probably early 3rd round maybe with the talent he has. Coach, I like him a lot. Let's talk about your guy.
Yeah, I had a tough time picking my guy. But I really wanted to look at somebody that maybe the Lions would be looking at specifically, and I found kind of something I just feel like could be a fit. And that's Jack Sawyer out of Ohio State, one of the national champion Buckeyes, 6'5", 260-pound senior. He was a 5-star prospect right outside of Columbus. He grew up around just miles from the Horseshoe. And he was born 3 miles from the Horseshoe. I think he lived 12 miles from it. So he's right there from that Columbus area. He won the national championship this year, and he was a guy that kind of dotted the I for the Ohio State Buckeyes in that national championship team, kind of like Gibby's home run off of Goose Gossage. He sealed the deal for the Buckeyes with a scoop and score touchdown. 2-time All Big Ten selection, 25.5 career tackles for loss, 20 career sacks. So he was a high-level producer there, 100 career quarterback pressures. So this guy was a menace back there, over 1,500 career reps on the edge. Excellent run defender, really plays the run well. He's a tremendous effort and energy player, gives you everything he can go with every rep, that he's out there. And he's very strong with his hands and plays a very responsible edge that way. He's just not quite the athlete that some of these other guys are. He's a big guy, and he is an athlete, but not quite the athlete that some of the prospects that we've talked about earlier are. He does not get off the ball exceptionally well, so he's more of a point end edge, that guy. He's not going to really be a get-off rocket ship that I kept on talking about today. NFL athleticism is going to be a clear and present challenge for him. Yeah, it's something that he's always going to have to fight. That's not to say that he can't. This is a rotational piece here, Drew, but a guy that can help your defensive line get a lot better. He would be a complementary piece to a rotation, but I would love to see the Lions look at a guy like this at 60. I think that would be a very, very distinct possibility.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I actually I like Sawyer a lot too. I almost would take him over Swinson, to be honest with you. I really do like him. Saw a lot more of him too.
Physicality's there.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome job, Coach. Again, this is such a deep group, and it's such a position of need for many football teams, and certainly our Detroit Lions are in need. You know, they have Aiden Hutchinson, but as we all know, injuries happen. You know, and that's enough said. You can never have enough really solid edge defenders. So definitely looking forward to this draft to see what they do with that. So stick and stay. Don't forget to subscribe to us, folks. Thank you for watching, and thank you for the support. We have many more to come still. There's about 4 or 5 more position groups before our first round mock draft and the actual NFL draft. So don't forget to keep watching for that every week. For Coach Andy Shield, I'm Drew. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Follow us on YouTube so you don't miss an episode at the Sports Peninsula Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter X. Just look for @SportsP Podcast, and follow us to keep up on sports around the great state of Michigan and beyond. You can also catch our show every Saturday night at 7 p.m. on the ESEN Network channel as part of Roku. When you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one, Sports Peninsula Podcast.